It started, as these things usually do, with an insult I was supposed to swallow quietly. It was Thanksgiving dinner at my son's house in North Vancouver, one of those sprawling glass and steel homes that cling to the mountainside like they're showing off to the harbor below. The kind of house that costs $4 million and, to my mind, has no soul. I was seated at the far end of the dining table, a slab of reclaimed wood long enough to land a float plane on. My son Derek and his wife Vanessa were holding court at the other end, their voices loud and careless. Vanessa was examining her manicure, saying, "The renovation on the Whistler Chalet is non-negotiable. I want the hot tub overlooking the slope. The designer says it'll be ready by ski season." Derek didn't look up from his phone. He never did anymore. "Whatever you want, babe. Once this Pacific Rim deal closes, you can have 2 hot tubs." They were talking through me, around me, about me, as if I were a piece of furniture, an old armchair inherited from a dead relative that they hadn't figured out how to throw away yet. I am Arthur Blackwood. I am 73 years old, and I had become invisible. Ever since my wife Margaret passed away 8 years ago, I had done what I thought was right. I sold our family home in Kerrisdale, a place drowning in memories, and I moved into the small coach house on Derek's property. I wanted to be close to my only son. I wanted to be near my grandchildren. I thought it was what Margaret would have wanted. My granddaughter, Emma, who was 14, caught my eye from across the table. "Grandpa, my debate tournament is next Saturday. Will you come watch? I'm arguing the affirmative on healthcare reform." Before I could answer, Derek cut in without looking up. "Don't bother, Grandpa. He needs his rest. Old people tire easily." Vanessa giggled. It was a light, dismissive sound, but it cut deeper than any blade. "She's right, honey. Just let him be. He probably dozed off twice just sitting there." They decided for me. They diagnosed my energy, my interests, my entire existence without so much as a glance in my direction. I said nothing. I just looked down at my plate where the turkey had gone cold. They had turned me into a ghost in my own family. And the worst part was that I had let them. I had mistaken my silence for patience. I saw now it was just permission. 3 days later, a sharp knock rattled the door of my coach house. It was Derek. This was unusual. He avoided my small home as if it carried some contagious disease of old age. He was holding an expensive bottle of scotch, which he thrust into my hands with his salesman's smile. "For you, Dad. Single malt. The good stuff." He knew I couldn't drink. My cardiologist had been crystal clear about that after my atrial fibrillation diagnosis. This wasn't kindness. This was a prop. Derek was a real estate developer. He sold dreams wrapped in glass towers and mountain views. He sold the image of success. I'd seen his type my entire career. They don't just enter a room, they appraise it. He didn't waste time on small talk. "Dad, I'm sitting on the opportunity of a lifetime. A mixed-use development in Richmond. 30 stories. Retail, residential, the works. It's practically approved, but we hit a small financing gap." He leaned forward, his cologne overwhelming. "I know you've got your pension, your investments. I just need a bridge. 800,000. That's all. I'll give you back $1 million within the year. That's a 50% return. Dad, you can't beat that anywhere." I watched him carefully. He wasn't just enthusiastic. He was desperate. A fine sheen of sweat glistened on his forehead, despite the November chill. "Derek," I said, my voice level. I'm 73 years old. I'm past my risk-taking years. That money is for my care, for my medical needs, and frankly, for your children's education fund. The answer is no. The transformation was instantaneous. The mask crumbled. Unbelievable, he hissed. After everything we do for you, you live here rent-free. We include you in every holiday, and you won't lift a finger for your own son. I paid for this coach house, Derek, and the land it sits on. You are one selfish old man, Dad. One selfish, senile old man. He threw the bottle onto my coffee table with enough force to make me flinch, then stormed out, slamming the door. The vibration made Margaret's photograph tremble on the shelf. A week later, I woke at 2 o'clock in the morning to a familiar tightness in my chest. Not the sharp stab of a heart attack, but the slow, suffocating squeeze of an arrhythmia episode. My cardiologist's voice echoed in my mind. Don't be a hero, Arthur. Call for help. My first call was to the main house. Vanessa answered on the 5th ring, her voice thick with annoyance. Arthur, do you know what time it is? I'm not feeling well, I said, keeping my voice steady. My heart's acting up. Can someone drive me to the hospital, just to be safe? A heavy, theatrical sigh came through the phone. Arthur, seriously. Derek has an investor meeting at 7. We can't just drop everything. Call an ambulance if it's that bad. You're probably just having indigestion. Click. She didn't ask how bad the pain was. She didn't ask if I was frightened. She told me I was overreacting. I called a taxi. I sat in the back of a Honda Civic, clutching my chest, while a stranger drove me to Vancouver General. It was a cardiac episode. They stabilized me, kept me for observation, and discharged me. At noon, I took another taxi home. As we pulled up to the property, I saw Vanessa's white Mercedes. It wasn't at the house. It was parked at the Hollyburn Country Club. Her important morning. They didn't just disrespect me. They didn't just see me as a wallet to be emptied. They saw me as a nuisance, a problem to be managed, an inconvenience to be ignored. That was the moment I knew something had to change. I just didn't know how fast it was coming. 2 weeks later, I was sitting with my morning coffee, watching the rain streak down the windows, when a sharp, professional knock echoed through my coach house. I opened the door to a woman in a crisp uniform, holding a clipboard and a thick envelope. Arthur Blackwood? Yes. Legal courier. Sign here, please. I signed. She handed me the envelope and was gone before I could close the door. The envelope was heavy, not with paper, with intent. I picked up the letter opener Margaret had given me 40 years ago and sliced it open. The words hit me like a physical blow. It was a legal petition filed in the Supreme Court of British Columbia. The petitioners were Derek Blackwood and Vanessa Blackwood. The respondent was me. They were requesting an emergency hearing. They were seeking a certificate of incapacity. They were asking the court to appoint them as my legal guardians. They were claiming I was mentally incompetent. The petition alleged that I exhibited signs of severe cognitive decline, dementia, and an inability to manage my financial affairs. They claimed I was a danger to myself. They wanted control of everything: my bank accounts, my investments, my property, my life. They weren't just trying to take my money. They were trying to erase me. I flipped to the evidence. Exhibit A was a psychological evaluation from a Dr. Richard Fong. According to his assessment, I displayed profound memory deficits, paranoid ideation, and a complete inability to process complex financial information. I stared at the name Dr. Richard Fong. A cold, dry laugh escaped my lips. I had never met anyone named Richard Fong in my entire life. I didn't knock. I didn't hesitate. I walked across the rain-soaked lawn, past the infinity pool, and straight to the main house. The glass doors were open. I could hear the television playing, some reality show about housewives. They were in the living room. Derek was sprawled on the sectional, scrolling through his phone. Vanessa was flipping through a magazine, a glass of wine on the side table. They looked relaxed, unbothered, like two predators who had set a trap and were waiting for their prey to bleed out. I stepped inside. The television fell silent as someone hit the mute button. Vanessa looked up first. Her face flickered with surprise, then annoyance. "Arthur, you really should call before you come over. We might have had company." I held up the envelope. "What is this?" Derek sat up slowly, his face arranging itself into an expression of wounded concern. "Dad, we were hoping to talk to you about this before you saw it." "What is this, Derek?" "It's for your own good." He stood up, spreading his hands in a gesture of false helplessness. "Look, after that heart thing last month, Vanessa and I realized you just can't take care of yourself anymore. You're forgetting things. You're confused. You need someone to handle things for you. I had an arrhythmia which you refused to help me with." He waved his hand dismissively. "See, that's exactly what I mean. You're confused about what happened. Dr. Fong said, this is classic dementia behavior. I've never met any Dr. Fong." "Of course you have, Dad. You just don't remember." I turned to Vanessa. "This is what you want, to have your father-in-law declared legally insane?" She didn't even look up from her magazine. "We're trying to help you, Arthur. You should be grateful." Grateful. Derek's patience snapped. The mask fell away completely. "You know what, Dad? This is exactly what Dr. Fong was talking about. Paranoid, aggressive, unable to accept reality." He picked up his wine glass and raised it in a mock toast. "See you in court, old man. Better find yourself a good lawyer. Oh, wait, you probably can't afford one anymore." That was it. That was the moment the man they thought was a feeble, confused old ghost died, and something else woke up. I walked back to my coach house. I closed the door, and the sound of the lock engaging was the loudest thing I had ever heard. It was the sound of a line being drawn. They thought this was the home of a senile old man, a quiet box for me to fade away in. They had never seen the basement. Behind the water heater, hidden beneath a shelf of old paint cans, was a steel door, not locked with a key, locked with a biometric scanner. I pressed my thumb to the glass. The light flashed green. The doors swung open with a soft, expensive click. This was my real home. There was no bed here, no recliner, just floor-to-ceiling file cabinets, a wall of legal references, 3 computer monitors, and a secure telephone line. Derek thought I was a retired government bureaucrat, a paper pusher who had spent his career filing documents in some dusty Ottawa office. He thought my greatest achievement was surviving long enough to collect a pension. He had no idea. 40 years ago in Ottawa, and across every province of this country, I wasn't Arthur the retiree. They called me the Hammer. I was the youngest justice ever appointed to the Supreme Court of British Columbia. By 45, I was Chief Justice. I wrote the landmark decisions that reshaped corporate law in this country. I was the judge that Bay Street feared and respected in equal measure. I was the man who sent 14 executives to prison in the Westgate financial scandal. I was the one who broke the Pacific Timber conspiracy. I stepped down 15 years ago when Margaret got sick. I traded my chambers and my robes for hospital waiting rooms and chemotherapy schedules. I did it without hesitation. I did it because she was my world. I became a full-time husband, then a widower, then a father trying to reconnect with a son who had become a stranger, and finally, an invisible grandfather. I let the hammer retire because my family needed Arthur. Today, my son and his wife just gave the hammer a very good reason to pick up the gavel again. I sat down at my desk. I bypassed my regular phone and picked up the secure line. My fingers were steady as I dialed a number I hadn't used in 8 years. It rang once. Catherine Reeves? Catherine, it's Arthur Blackwood. Silence, then a sharp intake of breath. Justice Blackwood, my God, I thought you disappeared entirely. I'm in Vancouver, Catherine. I need you here tomorrow. Bring your team, the ones who know how to dig. Another pause. I could hear her mind working. What happened? My son filed for a certificate of incapacity. He's claiming I'm mentally incompetent. He wants control of my assets. A sound came through the phone, a laugh, short, sharp, incredulous. Your son is claiming that you, Arthur Blackwood, the hammer, are mentally incompetent? She paused. He has absolutely no idea who he just picked a fight with, does he? No, he doesn't. I'll be on the first flight. Just tell me where to start cutting. Catherine Reeves arrived at 9 o'clock the next morning. She wore a simple charcoal suit, no jewelry, her gray hair pulled back in a practical bun. She carried a single leather briefcase. She was the opposite of everything Derek and Vanessa represented. She was substance over style. She had been my clerk 30 years ago, back when I was reshaping corporate law from the bench. I had trained her. I had written her reference for law school, for her first firm, for her partnership. She was now one of the most feared litigators in Western Canada. She didn't waste time on pleasantries. She walked into my basement office, her eyes sweeping over the files, the computers, the legal volumes. A single nod of approval. They really have no idea, do they? They think I'm a retired civil servant. Of course they do. She picked up the petition and scanned it. Dr. Richard Fong. Let me guess. You've never heard of him? Never. Give me 2 hours. Take 1. She smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. I'll call you in 45 minutes. My secure line rang exactly 43 minutes later. Arthur, you're not going to believe this. Try me. Dr. Richard Fong is not a psychiatrist. He's not a psychologist. He's not a neurologist. He's not even a family doctor. I waited. He's a chiropractor. Was a chiropractor. His license was revoked by the College of Chiropractors of BC 4 years ago for insurance fraud and inappropriate billing practices. He was running a scam, billing for treatments he never provided. Derek hadn't found a corrupt expert. He had found a disgraced, desperate criminal. How did my son find a revoked chiropractor from Surrey to sign a psychiatric evaluation? That's what I spent the last 20 minutes figuring out. I heard the click of her keyboard. Fong was in serious debt after he lost his license. He owed $300,000 in legal fees and back taxes. He was facing bankruptcy. And 4 years ago, someone paid off his entire debt, every penny. The payment came through a numbered company registered in Alberta. I traced it. I felt the cold certainty settle in my chest. Who owns the numbered company? Pacific Horizon Developments Limited, your son's company, Arthur. Derek has owned this man for 4 years. He's been keeping him in his back pocket, waiting for exactly this moment. This wasn't a desperate act. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment grab for my money. This was premeditated. This was a contingency plan. My son had been preparing to have me declared incompetent for years, but there was still a piece missing. Catherine, Derek is desperate. I refused to give him $800,000, but a lawsuit like this costs money. Filing fees, lawyer retainers, bribing Fong. Where did he get the cash if he's broke? I'm already looking into it. Give me until tonight. I hung up, but I didn't wait. I started my own investigation. I began mapping out Derek's corporate structure. Pacific Horizon Developments was a maze of numbered companies, holding corporations, and offshore accounts. He had learned just enough about asset protection to be dangerous, but not enough to be competent. And he had made one fatal mistake. He had used the same email address to register every single one of his shell companies, a burner account he probably thought was untraceable. It took me less than 30 minutes to find the connection. Derek's company wasn't just struggling, it was hemorrhaging. His Richmond development wasn't facing a small financing gap. It was $50 million over budget, facing 17 contractor liens and 3 months behind on loan payments to a private equity fund called Greystone Capital Partners. Greystone wasn't a bank. They were sharks. They didn't offer extensions. They offered liquidation. The email trail told the whole story. Derek begging for more time, Greystone issuing default notices, and then, 2 weeks ago, the final blow. A capital call for $6 million due in 10 business days. If he didn't pay, they would seize everything. His company, his house, his cars, every asset tied to his name. He hadn't asked me for $800,000 to bridge a small gap. He had asked me because he was drowning. And when I said no, he activated his backup plan. But the question remained, where did he get the money to file this lawsuit? My phone rang. Catherine. Arthur, I found it, and you need to sit down. I'm already sitting. Your son didn't finance this attack with his own money. He couldn't. He's completely insolvent. She paused. He used the Margaret Blackwood Memorial Foundation. The words hit me like a physical blow. When Margaret died, I took $2 million from our savings and established a charitable foundation in her name. Its mission was to fund hospice care and end-of-life support services across British Columbia, the kind of compassionate care that had made her final months bearable. I had made Derek the foundation's director. I thought it would give him purpose. I thought it would connect him to his mother's memory. Catherine, tell me everything. The foundation's accounts have been systematically drained over the past 18 months. Consulting fees to Pacific Horizon Developments, event planning charges to a company called West Coast Premier Services, which is registered to Vanessa Blackwood, administrative expenses that don't correspond to any actual administration. How much? $470,000. Arthur, they didn't just steal from you. They stole from your wife's legacy. They used Margaret's name to finance their attack on Margaret's husband. I closed my eyes. I had prepared myself for Derek's betrayal. He was weak. He was greedy. These were character flaws, not surprises. But this was desecration. Catherine, I'm done defending. We're going on offense. Tell me what you need. Greystone Capital Partners, the fund that holds Derek's debt. I need the name of the managing partner. More typing. Marcus Webb. He's based in Calgary, but he has an office in Vancouver. I know Marcus Webb. I did. 25 years ago, Marcus Webb was a young hotshot analyst who had gotten himself tangled up in the Westgate financial scandal. The Crown wanted to charge him with conspiracy. They were convinced he was part of the insider trading ring. He wasn't. He was arrogant and greedy, but he wasn't a criminal. Not then. I was the judge who reviewed the evidence. I was the one who threw out the charges, because the prosecution's case was built on circumstantial nonsense and prosecutorial overreach. I saved his career. I saved him from prison. Marcus Webb went on to build Greystone Capital into a $2 billion empire. He never forgot. Catherine, I'm going to handle Greystone. You prepare the documentation for a complete forensic audit of the foundation. Every withdrawal, every payment, every signature. Understood. Arthur, what are you going to do? I'm going to buy my son's debt. I called Marcus Webb that afternoon. His assistant tried to block me. Mr. Webb is in a meeting. Tell him the hammer is calling. Tell him it's about Westgate. I was on hold for exactly 4 seconds. Justice Blackwood? His voice was careful, respectful. I never thought I'd hear from you again. I'm calling to collect on an old debt, Marcus. Silence. You have a loan out to a company called Pacific Horizon Developments. Derek Blackwood. He's in default. He is? We're preparing to seize his assets next week. The man's a disaster. I don't want you to seize his assets. I want you to sell me the debt. All of it. The note, the collateral, everything. Sell it to you, Arthur? It's toxic. He's never going to pay. I'm not buying it as an investment. I want to be his sole creditor. I'll wire the full outstanding balance today. $6 million. No questions, no paper trail. Marcus Webb was smart. He didn't ask why. You saved my career once, Justice Blackwood. You saved me from prison. If you want this man's debt, it's yours. Thank you, Marcus. No, Arthur, thank you. And good luck. Something tells me you won't need it. I hung up and called Catherine. It's done. Greystone no longer holds the note. I do. I am now my son's bank. I heard her sharp intake of breath. My God, Arthur, you're his creditor. I'm his reckoning. The hearing was scheduled for a Thursday morning, courtroom 3B of the British Columbia Supreme Court, a small beige room that smelled of floor polish and desperation. The kind of room where lives are quietly dismantled. Derek and Vanessa were already there when I arrived. They were sitting at the petitioner's table, whispering to each other, practically giddy with anticipation. Their lawyer, a man with slicked-back hair and a shiny suit, was shuffling papers with the confidence of someone who thought this would be easy. Then they saw me. I wasn't wearing the cardigan and khakis they were used to. I wasn't wearing the clothes of a fading old man. I was wearing armor. It was a charcoal 3-piece suit I hadn't worn in 15 years. The last time I put it on, I was delivering the keynote address at the Canadian Bar Association's annual conference. It still fit perfectly. Derek looked at me and let out a quiet snort of laughter. He leaned over and whispered something to Vanessa. She rolled her eyes and smirked. They thought I was playing dress-up, a dying animal puffing up its fur. Their lawyer glanced at me, sized me up as a confused old man in an expensive suit, and turned back to his notes. We sat down. Catherine placed her slim briefcase on the table and settled beside me. We said nothing. We just waited. All rise. We stood. The judge entered. A woman in her late 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. She settled into her chair and picked up the file. Please be seated. She put on reading glasses. We are here for the matter of Blackwood versus Blackwood. Application for Certificate of Incapacity. She read the caption, then looked up to identify the respondent. She looked at me, and froze. The color drained from her face. Her reading glasses slipped down her nose. She gripped the edge of her bench with both hands. "My God," she whispered. The words were caught by her microphone and amplified across the silent courtroom. "Is that Justice Blackwood?" Every head turned. Derek and Vanessa were staring at her, confused. What was happening? This wasn't part of their plan. I recognized her too. Justice Helen Park. But the woman I knew wasn't a distinguished jurist. The woman I knew was a terrified young Crown prosecutor 30 years ago, handed the biggest case of her career, the Westgate financial scandal. She was losing. Her evidence was crumbling. Her witnesses were being discredited. Until I intervened. I was the judge who guided her through the procedural minefield. I was the one who ensured the jury understood the complex financial evidence. I was the one whose instructions helped her secure 14 convictions. Helen Park hadn't just known me. I had made her career. Justice Park's face was pale. She stared at me, then slowly, deliberately, turned her gaze to the petitioner's table. "Counsel," she said, her voice no longer warm but ice cold. "Are you aware of who your respondent is?" Derek's lawyer stood up, baffled. "He's Arthur Blackwood, Your Honor, a retired civil servant." Justice Park let out a short, harsh breath. "No, counsel, that is Justice Arthur Blackwood, former Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of British Columbia, also known as the Hammer." She paused. "Good luck." The color drained from Derek's face. The hearing proceeded. Derek's lawyer, visibly rattled, called Dr. Richard Fong to the stand. Fong shuffled in like a man facing execution. He was sweating through his cheap suit. He took the stand with trembling hands. "Dr. Fong," the lawyer began, "did you evaluate the respondent?" "I did." His voice was thin, rehearsed. "And what were your findings?" Mr. Blackwood displayed severe cognitive decline, memory issues, confusion. He cannot manage his own affairs. Catherine stood. She held a single sheet of paper. "Mr. Fong," she said, her voice pleasant. Or should I say, just Mr. Fong, because you're not actually a doctor, are you? Fong blinked rapidly. "You are not a psychiatrist, not a psychologist, not a physician of any kind." She stepped closer. "You are a former chiropractor whose license was revoked 4 years ago for fraud. Isn't that correct?" "Objection!" Derek's lawyer leaped up. "This is character assassination." "It's cross-examination, counsel," Justice Park snapped. "And it's directly relevant to the witness's competency to give expert testimony." "Overruled. Answer the question, Mr. Fong." Fong's face was gray. I have medical training." "You were trained to crack backs, Mr. Fong, not to diagnose dementia." Catherine held up her paper. "And isn't it true that $300,000 of your personal debt was paid off 4 years ago by Pacific Horizon Developments, the petitioner's company?" The courtroom gasped. You've been on my client's son's payroll for 4 years, haven't you? Waiting for exactly this moment." Fong was shaking visibly. Justice Park's face was thunderous. "Mr. Fong, you have given false expert testimony in my courtroom. You have participated in a conspiracy to defraud. Bailiff, please take this man into custody. He is under arrest for perjury." The sound of handcuffs clicking echoed through the stunned silence. Derek was white. Vanessa was gripping his arm, her nails digging into his sleeve. Their case had just been led away in handcuffs. Derek's lawyer was floundering. His star witness was gone. His evidence was shattered. But Derek, desperate and cornered, demanded to take the stand himself. He was still convinced he could sell his way out of this. He sat in the witness box, gripping the railing. "Your Honor," he said, his voice dripping with false sincerity. "This is all a misunderstanding. My wife and I, we love my father. We're just concerned about him. He's confused. He's paranoid. He thinks everyone is out to get him." Catherine stood. "Mr. Blackwood, you testify that your father is confused and unable to make sound financial decisions." "That's right. He's not himself anymore." "Is that why, 2 weeks ago, you asked your allegedly confused, incompetent father for $800,000? Derek's face tightened. "That was an investment opportunity. I was trying to help him grow his money. An investment in your Richmond development, the one that's currently $50 million over budget, facing 17 contractor liens and 3 months in default on its primary loan. That's privileged information. It's public record when you're in default, Mr. Blackwood." Catherine's voice was sharp. "You didn't want your father's money for an investment. You wanted it because you're bankrupt. And when he refused, you activated a plan you've had in place for 4 years. A plan to have him declared incompetent so you could seize his assets." "That's a lie." "Then perhaps you can explain why the Margaret Blackwood Memorial Foundation, a charity established in your late mother's name to fund hospice care, has been systematically drained of $470,000 over the past 18 months. Derek's mouth opened and closed. "Consulting fees to your company, event planning charges to a shell corporation owned by your wife. You didn't just try to steal from your father, Mr. Blackwood. You stole from your mother's grave to do it." Derek cracked. "This is his fault," he screamed, pointing at me. "He had the money. He could have helped me. All he had to do was write one check, and he said no. He made me do this. It's all his fault." The courtroom was chaos. Justice Park banged her gavel. "Order. Mr. Blackwood, you will be silent, or I will hold you in contempt." She turned to me, her face a mixture of fury and something else. "Respect. Justice Blackwood, do you wish to respond?" I rose to my feet. "Thank you, Your Honor, but I'm not here to defend my sanity. My record speaks for itself." I paused. "I'm here to file a criminal complaint and to present this." Catherine stood and walked to the petitioner's table. She placed a thick document in front of Derek. "What is this?" he stammered. "That, Mr. Blackwood, is a notice of default and foreclosure from Greystone Capital. But not from Greystone Capital. They sold your debt 2 days ago." I let the words land. "They sold it to me." Derek's face went gray. "You defaulted on a $6 million loan, Derek. But you didn't default on Greystone. You defaulted on me. I am now your sole creditor, and I am calling the note effective immediately." "You can't. The house is mine, the cars are mine, Pacific Horizon Developments is mine. Every asset you thought you owned now belongs to me." I turned back to Justice Park. "This hearing is over, Your Honor. The eviction proceedings can begin at your convenience." Derek was finished. After his courtroom confession, the Crown prosecutor practically gift-wrapped the case. The evidence was overwhelming. The bank transfers from Margaret's foundation, the fraudulent invoices, the perjured testimony, the years of planning. His new lawyer tried to argue diminished capacity. They claimed he was under financial stress, that he wasn't thinking clearly. The jury wasn't sympathetic. They found him guilty on 14 counts of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy. The judge looked at Derek, this man who had tried to destroy his father's life to cover his own failures, and made an example of him. 8 years in a federal penitentiary. I watched them lead him away in an orange jumpsuit. No more designer suits, no more mountain views, no more hot tubs. The books were balanced. Vanessa was more complicated. She was Derek's wife, but she was also a co-conspirator. Her signature was on the shell company documents. She had processed the payments from Margaret's foundation. Her lawyer begged me for mercy. He claimed she was manipulated. He said Derek had controlled her. I asked one question. Did Derek force her hand when she signed those checks? She wasn't a victim. She was a volunteer. She took a plea deal. 18 months of house arrest, 200 hours of community service, full restitution. The judge, at my suggestion, assigned her to the Margaret Blackwood Hospice Center. Every week for the next 2 years, my daughter-in-law would spend her days with the dying. She would hold the hands of men and women in their final hours. She would see the kind of care that Margaret's foundation was supposed to fund. I wanted her to understand what she had stolen from. It was a just sentence. 6 months passed. The house on the mountainside was sold. The proceeds went to rebuild Margaret's foundation, now under professional management. I established a trust for Emma and her brother, locked away until they turned 25. I was in the coach house packing boxes. The secure room in the basement was empty. The hammer was retiring again. I heard hesitant footsteps on the porch. I opened the door. It was Vanessa. She was transformed. The designer clothes were gone, replaced by simple jeans and a plain sweater. Her face was pale, lined. She looked 10 years older. "Why?" she asked, her voice a rasp. "Why? What? Why did you let it get this far?" Her voice was trembling with exhausted rage. "You knew. You're him, the hammer. You knew what Derek was doing. You could have stopped us at any time." I just looked at her. "You could have shown me the evidence when he first asked for the money. You could have warned me, but you didn't. You let us file that lawsuit. You let us think we were winning. You wanted this." "If I had stopped you," I said, my voice quiet, "you would have learned nothing. You would have hated me for a week, and then you would have found another way, another scheme, another victim." I walked to my desk and picked up a photograph. Margaret, smiling in the garden. When Derek was 12, he stole $50 from his mother's purse to buy video games. Margaret found out. She cried for an hour, and then she hugged him and never said a word. She put the money back herself. I looked at Vanessa. She forgave him because her heart was soft. She wanted peace. I set the photograph down. I believe in ledgers. The books must always balance. Derek never paid for that first theft, so he just kept stealing bigger and bigger things. He didn't respect me. You didn't respect Margaret's memory. You didn't just cross a line. You erased it. Vanessa had no answer. "You didn't destroy yourselves," I said. "You were already destroyed. You were bankrupt in every way a human being can be. I just presented the bill." I handed her an envelope. "This is the address of a 1-bedroom apartment in New Westminster. First 6 months are paid. After that, you're on your own." She took the envelope with shaking hands. She looked at me one last time, then she turned and walked away. I am 73 years old. I have retired twice, once from the bench, once from being an invisible, accommodating, silent old man. My name is Arthur Blackwood, and my books are finally balanced. This entire ordeal taught me painful but necessary lessons. Lessons I want to share with anyone who might find themselves in a similar position. First, Silence should never be mistaken for weakness. For 8 years, I allowed my love for my family to blind me to their contempt. I thought patience was a virtue. I learned that patience without boundaries is simply permission to be mistreated. There is a difference between being kind and being a doormat. Know the difference. Second, age does not diminish your worth or your rights. In Canada, elder abuse takes many forms, and financial exploitation is one of the most common. 1 in 5 older Canadians reports being mistreated. If someone, even family, is pressuring you for money, controlling your decisions, or making you feel small, that is abuse. You have the right to say no. You have the right to protect yourself. Third, prepare for the worst, even while hoping for the best. I never wanted to use the resources I had accumulated. I never wanted to become the hammer again, but I was prepared. Keep your documents organized. Know your assets. Have trusted contacts outside your immediate family. Hope for love, but plan for betrayal. Fourth, accountability is not revenge. I did not destroy my son out of spite. I held him accountable because a life without consequences is a life without growth. Sometimes the most profound act of love for yourself, and even for those who have wronged you, is to finally and decisively balance the books. Finally, your legacy is what you choose to protect. Margaret's foundation will now help thousands of families facing end-of-life care. Her name will mean something good. That is what matters. Not the house, not the money, not the family name. What you leave behind is defined by the choices you make when it counts.